dum 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 dum
Space between.
Why, hello.
No, wow.
You see what I did there?
Put them together.
It's a mixture
Good
of what I do sometimes and what I do other times, okay?
What you've done and what you do.
Right. This is the Space Between podcast where we talk about the space between life and art. Passion and business. What's happening now and what's happening next. Just some ASMR there for the readers, you know? Or
Readers.
Listeners or viewers. I'm Pat Shand.
I'm still Amy Shand.
Do you say that because you haven't divorced me?
No.
Is it the joke?
No, because we've been recording a lot of episodes.
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
When Amy does anything that I find to be egregious,
Which is a lot.
I say something to the effect of, hope you enjoy it. And she's like, enjoy what? And I'm like, divorce,
We
know?
always threaten each other with divorce.
Yeah, more me though, you know?
I've caught on
Okay.
to the joke.
I want to welcome our guest to our home. This is my longtime friend. I've known Dany longer than I've known you, okay?
Yeah.
So feel that for a second. Welcome.
Hey, man.
I'm so happy to have you here. This is my dear friend, Dany Roth. I'll introduce one aspect of you, okay? And then I'll let you
Sure.
sort of roll it out, all right?
Yeah.
You scared?
No, I think
I just don't know. Who knows which direction it'll go?
Right.
So
Well-
many possibilities.
I'll expound on this a bit later because I want to get into like how we met and stuff, and
Sure.
The initial rivalry in some ways, you know.
Oh, true rivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so
Deep cuts.
one thing I'll introduce Dany as is a comic book writer. We had our first gig together.
Nice.
You know, our first ever gigs. I mean, I think your first too, right?
Yeah, no, I hadn't written anything prior to that.
Yeah, it was in IDW's Angel Yearbook one shot, and part of the reason I'm in there at all is because you told me that you were gonna be like I had a long talk. It was at New York Comic Con in I think 2007 maybe.
I take credit for your entire success. Your whole career would not have really happened without me.
Yeah, I mean,
Is what I feel like you're saying,
Yeah.
and that's true.
yeah.
That is a good first gig.
You know, I agree. To an extent, all right. I had a long talk with IDW's Chris Ryall, and then a bit later, I was talking to you about that, and you said something to the effect of, "Are you going to pitch for the yearbook?" And I was like, "We can do that," because you had been talking to Mariah.
That's true. I had been talking to Mariah. Boy, this is like so far back.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
really weird.
Yeah,
This is
I mean, I've known you for over a decade now.
we used to talk on a Buffy forum.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
one was it? Do you remember which one?
I do.
forgot now.
I kind of don't even want to say it because I'm not sure.
Oh.
Does it still exist?
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of horrible things I said on that board. You know?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
Go back into your history.
Yeah.
That's true. That's like trying to find somebody's old live journal. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to be not
Remember
good, not great.
Zanga?
Oh, I'll tell you this. I had a Zanga. I had to call the office of Zanga and be like, "Hey, can you cut that shit?" You know? And because it's like two guys, they just said, "Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's gone."
So they both said yeah. There wasn't
Yeah.
some kind of like fisticuffs between the two of them, like they had to duke it out.
There we go.
One
Yeah.
said let's get rid of it. One said let's stay. No, that's how I remember us first meeting. It's weird. I feel like we could talk all day about Buffy fandom.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What an absolute nightmare it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Buffy, but boy, like I feel like you and I kind of came into talking about stuff during the time in which the comic books were coming out.
Yes.
And that was a troubled time.
Yeah,
People were very mad. I was talking with your co-writer and previous guest Vita Ayala and our friend Dany Roth, who sometimes writes books and edits books with Vita about some of the things that happened during the events of Buffy season 8, and I am shocked. I'm like, wow, they really wrote those things.
Oh yeah,
those are really choices that they made. And then I was like, this is fine. And then I look back and I'm like, I mean, bless them. They really wanted to take some big risks, but boy, like, pregnant robot Buffy.
Oh, crazy! Yeah, I mean, it was.
That sounds wild.
Yeah,
it was something else.
They did like a whole issue where Buffy struggled over the idea of whether she was going to get an abortion or not. And then at the end, she found
a robot.
Out that she hadn't been replaced by a robot, but she thought she was herself.
Eh?
yeah.
It really was. It was a wild time. I think like it's one of those weird things where like I was on one side of the fence because I was working for a website that had kind of gotten to know a lot of those people.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. You know, like I knew some of those writers and some of the editors and stuff, and they were very nice to us. And so when they would get yelled at, I would be like, this seems like a lot. So it was just a lot of. It was a really wild time. Now that I think back on it, I haven't thought about that in, like you said, probably about 13 years.
Yeah, because I ran a site called Buffyverse Reviews. And it was just a blog site, a blog spot. And do you mind if I say what yours was?
You can feel free to mention it.
There we go. You worked on a site called Buffy Fest, right?
Buffy Fest, because we held Buffy Fests twice a year. Myself and my friends Tara and Michelle and a lot of our friends would get together, and like we had a big forum where we would argue over what episodes we were going to watch. Boom. And then one day Tara sent an email to Michelle and I and was like, I made a website.
Oh my God, I have a spam call.
That's why I turned my phone off.
No. See, my
it's on your.
It's on my computer. It's on my computer. But here's the thing.
That's why you got to turn your computer off before you use your. Anyway, very helpful.
We keep that shit in, dude. We keep it in.
Yeah. Great quality entertainment. But she just said like, hey, I made a website and we're all gonna write for it.
Yeah.
And then we did. And then one day Michelle said, we're gonna interview people who write Buffy and Angel comic books. And I said, that's stupid. And then we did. Yeah, and we what I always thought about your site was that it was much more professional than mine. It was much more structured. Well, that was all Tara and Michelle. That was all them. I would do things, and they always used to say I was going rogue. They'd be like, "You're going rogue again," because I would go on the forums and engage with people that were mad at us.
Right.
And I'd be like, "Let's have a reasonable conversation," and then Tara and Michelle would be like, "Don't talk to them. What are you doing?"
Yeah. No.
Don't say anything. And I'd be like, surely we can have a reasonable discussion. They're like, they were like way ahead on this whole internet thing.
Yeah.
Where they were like, you can't, it's not gonna, if people were mad, that's okay. You don't have to, they don't have to like us. We don't have to it's okay. Not everybody has to get along all the time.
That's hard though. That's hard.
It is very hard. Tara and Michelle were always, they're very professional. They're full grown people in a way that I don't think I was or am.
Well, hold on. What wasn't it going rogue that you hung out with me at all?
That's true. Yeah. That is true. That was quite famously a going rogue move. But that's only because we called you Pat's Hand.
Yeah.
That's it. That really fucking hilarious riff.
No. I mean, it's not only. See, it's a popular riff too, because also Stephen Mooney, who was the artist of Angel back then, also called me Pat's Hand. So you had good company there.
That's it. Yeah. I definitely want to be associated with Steve Mooney, a good artist. That's a fact. Yeah. It's kind of weird. So wait, how many people did you talk to? Did you talk to like Brian Lynch and those folks back at the time?
Well, I'll share this little story. Brian Lynch was like my hero.
Brian Lynch, the for the record, so that people know, the writer of Secret Life of Pets and Minions.
Yeah.
Now, was the then writer for Angel After the Fall. Yes. And had been affiliated and had done some stuff with Kevin Smith prior to that. He did a movie called Big Helium Dog, and if you see some of the the old View Askew movies, he'll like appear in the background. There's like a shot of him and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So like at the time he was mostly known for being like a big comic book writer, but he's gone on to be like a really big movie writer now.
Yes. Brian, I love actually. Yeah. He back then he would critique my short films that I would post. He would send me feedback. I met him at New York Comic Con, and I brought my friend who was a actor in one of my web series that he hadn't even given me feedback on, and he recognized the guy from it. You know, he's just always been very nice. He actually told me that he tried to talk to IDW about me writing a Kate spinoff that I didn't even ask for. So he's someone that I see as like looking out for me before I was even smart enough to look out for myself, which I actually include you in as well.
Yeah, he would tell Tara and Michelle and I that we were camera ready and that we should be going out and doing like interviews for like major publications and stuff like that. He was I mean, like Brian has always, I think, been very quick to be supportive of people. So that's like, I feel like that's like probably one of the big things that I remember from that time was that he was very gung-ho to talk to everybody. He was probably the most talk to everybody guy. Him, and then you and I don't want to say fractured, but like I got very tight with Mariah McCourt, and then you got very tight with Scott Tipton.
Yes.
And both of them also, I think, like it's funny to look back now that IDW doesn't really have anything to do with those books anymore, and we're never really like the canonical stuff. But as far as the creatives were concerned, like those were the ones that were really, really like on it. I don't know who was their marketing person. I don't know if there was anybody telling them what to do, but I always thought that like they did a really good job of engaging with an often tumultuous, argumentative fan base.
Yeah. And I was part of that. Yeah, I often argued online, which I would hate that. But before we get too far into this,
okay.
How about introduce yourself, your favorite projects, things that you're working on now? I was actually just listening to a podcast of yours. But yeah, just give yourself a little
who are you?
Yeah. Who are you?
My name is Dany Roth. I'm a former Sci-Fi Wire host and now podcaster. Let's see, what do I do? Yeah, I worked for Sci-Fi Wire for about 8 years, and then I ran their flagship podcast, Who Won the Week, for about 4 of those years. And for about that same time, I did a lot of video content for them. We go to conventions and interview people for them, and now I co-host Song versus Song with a fellow named Todd in the Shadows. If anybody is familiar with Todd, he's probably, I feel like, one of like the last well-known music critics. He has a YouTube series, a couple of them, one called One Hit Wonderland, where he reviews like one-hit wonder acts and like what they were like before the hit, what happened with the hit, why it got so big, and then what happened to their careers after and whether or not they deserve better. He does a thing called Train Records, where he picks up albums that were so bad that they destroyed careers. And then we do Song versus Song, where we take 2 very similar songs and then arbitrarily and unnecessarily argue about which one is better.
Nice.
In random, silly ways. And I do that. And I do, I was doing a podcast with my dad because Star Trek Picard came back. That was called Picard's Not My Dad, which is on brief hiatus, but will be coming back when Star Trek Discovery is back on. And then I'm about to start doing a podcast with Vita Ayala, who we mentioned before, and Dany Roth, and that is called The Delta Quadrant, because I like Star Trek too much. We're going to do a rewatch of Star Trek Voyager. So The Delta Quadrant is the podcast to listen to. Definitely don't listen to any other podcasts that have that name. Not that there are any. No, there's one, but I didn't know about it until after the fact. And also, don't listen to the Delta Flyers, which is the one with the actual actors. I want to start a thing now where I just like anything that the actors say about the episodes when they're doing their rewatch is a lie. Like, don't believe them. I'm going to start like a big YouTube series where I pick apart their podcasts and just arbitrarily go like, this is a lie. And then like try and create like a conspiracy theory about why they're lying about a 15-year-old show.
That's fun. That's fun time.
Yep. So that's what I do now.
that kind of hits home for me because my dad used to love Voyager. He was a big Voyager fan, and I would always try to get him to watch Buffy, and he would always try to get me to watch Voyager. And there was little overlap now. So, but listening to you and your dad talk about Picard, that makes me feel like now I would like to do that. You know, like now I would like to watch his favorite show with him. You know, so that vibe of you and your dad revisiting something that you both love, it's nice.
You guys did watch Supernatural, though.
We did.
Oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that was it. I remember. It's kind of weird now. It almost feels vaguely prescient, but doing a Picard podcast at the time when we started doing it, it was just like we were very surprised that show was going to happen at all.
Oh yeah.
And then I think we were both also surprised that neither one of us was dead yet. That was a real shocker because my dad is old and I am a crazy person who also was like very sick all the time. So we were both like, wow, holy shit, more Picard. And also we're both still alive. So we decided to commemorate that by doing a podcast. And my dad has worked, in finance for a very long time and is a creative guy, but never had a creative outlet before, I don't think. And so I said, well, we could do this and this will be your creative outlet. And it was sort of an opportunity to have a public showing that I like my dad, which I don't think we had ever done before. I don't think I'd ever said hey, I like my dad. Here he is. Yeah. My dad, I like him. Here's a podcast. And so nice it became a lot more meaningful once the world started ending. I was like, wow, good thing we did this. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad that we did it, and I'm really glad that we're going to continue doing it. But thank you, man. Thank you for mentioning that podcast. I think it's funny because it's not the podcast that a lot of people listen to, but it is the podcast that means the most to me personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what you said too, I think rings so true. I mean, now it's so popular that we all express our smallest, most petty thoughts on Twitter, I'm so used to seeing people talking about how much they love their parents, but just all they do is complain about them. So for you to actually like your dad enough that you can sit next to him and, create a podcast, because the truth is that it's to create something with someone where it's kind of an open format, If I liked you a little bit less, we couldn't even do this.
True.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it's actually kind of heartwarming. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it was mostly selfish just because I knew when Picard was coming out, I was like, I better come up with a reason to like this.
Yeah.
Because I knew I would be very critical. I've seen, like you were talking about, you look on the internet and everyone's very critical of things.
Yeah.
And Picard got a lot of really negative press from a lot of people that are big Star Trek fans talking about how they don't like it. And I think it would have been very easy for me to be more critical of that show than we were. Yeah. But also Patrick Stewart was playing Picard again, and my dad and I were both alive to see it and got to watch most of those episodes together, in a shared room, and then talk about it for an hour.
That's great.
To me, that was the thing that mattered more than anything. So I think I viewed that entertainment in a different way. And it was nice because like you said, you look at Twitter and it's a very easy thing to do to rag on something. And I don't know, man, that's joyless some of the time, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Certainly for this, I was like, this would not be fun for me to just sit and hate Picard would be the most unpleasant thing I could imagine. So doing it with my dad was a selfish way of being well, I'll enjoy it because we're watching it together.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And I remember you, and anything that you want me to not say, just stop me. But speaking of internet hate, you're the first person that I remember who I know who got torn a new asshole on the internet when you were doing that webcomic. And I was so furious for you.
The Brindlefloss webcomic?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
I knew that. Well, so all right. So the story about that is that the artist that we picked, I guess it had some kind of he was somewhat infamous in ways that I don't even at the time I was is it crazy to me that I feel I don't understand why this is such a big deal. And now I look back on it and I'm like, no, I was correct. There was no reason for any of this. It was very strange. Like, if I were to tell you that I thought that comic was a learning experience, more so than it was, I think, like an overwhelming success. Like, I don't look back at those comics and go like, man, that was high art. What great shit we did. But I do think that the three of us were constantly under tight deadlines where it was like we were going to release X number of comics every week on deadline at the same time, no matter what.
Yeah.
And even that, that would sometimes mean that the quality was there, and sometimes it meant that it wouldn't be. And it was working with people that I didn't really know. Like, so that's the Burn Off Lost comics. So my co-writer was Brent Black. And we literally had met at a con, like I had met you at a con. And I said, I think you should make a webcomic because you're going to get older. And if you want this persona, this YouTube persona that you have to perpetuate after you become a person that doesn't look like the person you look like now, you could have this as a backup plan. And it's, I have to say that idea was sound, but because we'd never worked together and, I think we both falsely assumed that we would work in similar ways. There were all these huge challenges that arise that happen when there's any kind of like creative collaboration. And we both learned a lot during those 2 years. But yeah, like one of the big things that I learned was that people on the internet are a lot, and often for no reason. Like there's no way, you can't diagnose it. You can't go like, oh, like here's why. And then I can sit from this place of understanding, talk to you, and we'll find some kind of accord. No, the internet doesn't operate that way. And that was sort of the first real awareness that I had, that you just kind of have to say like, well, I'll make the art. It was a webcomic. I don't know, art is a big word, but you have to just make it and then let that be what it's going to be. And if it succeeds, it succeeds. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But you can't get wrapped up in people trying to assign meaning to things that you created that aren't there, or like disliking an artist because of things that you didn't know about before and don't make, anyway, that gets very particular. The point is you can't really, the internet, oftentimes you have to be able to put it aside.
Yeah, and that's such a learned skill too. And because it's your passion that they're critiquing. It's something that you went in with a certain idea, and for them to project something negative onto it. Like I remember, this has happened to all of us. And by the way, if you hear a pained meow, our cat Chi-Chi, right? She's
not in pain.
No, she has this little catnip toy, and she'll go buy the toy and make this very specific meow.
There it is.
Yeah,
I heard it.
Where she'll wait for you to go to the toy and throw it, and then she'll chase it. She'll never bring it back to you, but she'll do the first part of fetch, So we, all three of us...
Bad. I want to go throw it for her.
Do it, yeah. All three of us have had in our careers so far, someone do that. Someone project this negative meaning that we, of course, never intended, and that I think isn't even there. Onto our projects, like me, for example, in my recent series, Little Girl, the ghost girl, we see flashbacks into her life, and there was her father is this insane preacher who he abused her, and he one time referred to her as having stunted speech, and someone who emailed me complained that there should have been a warning on the book for language that says to disabled people that they shouldn't exist because of that stunted speech line. And my first thought was, one, no matter what the character says, he's the villain. He's in the wrong. And two, that line is about a stutter, and I have a stutter. Right? So I'm not talking about any reader who has a stutter shouldn't exist. And just to have that intent projected onto me and to be asked to change the way that I sell my story based on that I found that to be offensive. More offensive than the actual story,
Sure. I think so. My perspective on these things now, with a lot of hindsight and a lot of experience of this kind of thing, because it does. I mean, like your career goes in cycles, right? Like you have times when people like what you're doing. You have times when like a person doesn't like a thing that you did, and then like a bunch of other people will pick up on that. That's it. That's just the cycle of creativity. But you basically, I ask myself to try to do this one thing, and I don't always succeed, and that is to just set it aside, not permanently, but like a person says something, and if you don't expect it and it's a negative response, you're gonna be like really kind of taken back by it.
Yeah.
That's a natural thing. But you can't respond to that. You do that thing where you say, okay, I'll put it aside and then I'll let my brain back here work on it. Like let it just be one of the little processes that's happening here, and let it work for a couple of days or a week or two or whatever. Yeah. And then after a while, eventually you'll realize whether or not the thing has merit. It doesn't mean you're dismissing it. It just means that like, if you just immediately try to respond to a thing, you're not going to have thought about it. And I think that once you expect that from yourself, then to a degree, like not expect, but what I wish is that I think when somebody like that comment that you're talking about, Pat, if that person had maybe thought before they just shot that shit out on Twitter or wherever, like maybe it would have occurred to them that there is something that they missed. Yeah. Like, I think that's, that's sort of like the thing that people have to learn about any tool. And in this case, Twitter is the tool, is that you can write something immediately. You have that option. You can do that at any time. But if you just write any old thing without thinking for a split second about whether or not that's a good idea, you're going to end up putting out a lot of things out into the world that will hurt yourself and will also hurt other people potentially.
I couldn't agree more.
Are you taking notes, Donald?
Yeah. And, I mean, I myself have done that,
Of course. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, you can't, there's a degree of anger I think you can feel about something like that, right? Like, I've certainly been frustrated about those things, but like, I try to remind myself that I have had many occasions, especially, thinking back about, the however, like 8-9 years that I've been using Twitter. I'm like, wow, like things that I said even 3 or 4 years ago are things I would never, ever say now, because I've lived enough to go like, oh, once you're in the public eye, people feel like they can say anything about you. And you go, oh, that sucks. Yeah. Why did I say things about people that I didn't know at all? Yeah. Why did I do that? Like I knew them personally. Like that's a real hard lesson to learn. And I wish that I had learned it without having people done it to me, because it feels like it should be obvious, but human beings are flawed, Pat. That's why people need therapy. Obvious. Didn't you say that you got mad because someone said you should go to therapy? I was watching one of your other episodes.
Yeah. Like
everyone should be in therapy, Pat. Literally everybody. No, every soul on this earth should be in therapy.
I agree. And what I'll say is this, right? I wasn't offended at the idea that I could need therapy. What annoyed me a little bit was the context in which it was brought up, which was that me thinking that we should keep quarantine going. That
is a wild.
Yeah.
That's a wild statement.
Yes. All right, but what I want to say too is just an example of what I've done in the past, and sort of like a moment where I realized that this is wrong to do. I don't know if either of you remember this, but there was some scientific achievement where it was the first time a female scientist had done something, and it was 2 women and a guy. And the guy wore this button-up shirt where it was like candy painted with images of like bikini girls, right? And I posted something like, it kind of sucks that this guy is surrounded by 2 professional women who have like dealt with sexism in their careers, and that they hit this achievement, and here he is between them with this shirt, And then,
I remember this.
Yeah, and then he kind of got piled on, and I joined the pile on, and then like the next day, the guy posted this video where he's crying, saying he never intended to do anything bad. Like
he's like, I just like that shirt.
Yeah, like he said that it's his wife's favorite shirt,
Aww.
And I just then I felt so bad. And I was just like, there are people who don't even look at Twitter and don't see the climate. And that made me think, like, what if other people were already saying this, what value did my saying this add in the first place? And the truth was that some of the reason that, and I was about to say we, but I'll say I used to look to score Twitter points, you know? And I think that that's true of a lot of people.
Like, oh, this makes me look like a feminist.
Yeah, and the truth is that now I would never write that tweet, and I would block anyone who did on principle, you know? And because I think that is the new bullying, and that is the new actual harassment. And yeah,
my perception is this, Pat. I think that people want to do good, right? The reason that you tweeted that out, I don't think was built on, like, you can say, like, maybe part of you thought like you'd get some kind of feminism brownie points or whatever.
Yeah.
But people are not, like one side of a die. We're all like a 10 million sided die. We have like a million things that sort of inspire the decisions that we make. I truly believe, even when people do things that are unbelievably cruel and thoughtless, that they do it because they think that they're doing the right thing, right? Like that's the culture of Twitter is such that, like, you hear like a person did a bad thing and then you go, let's destroy that person, right? Like there's a reason why that instinct like makes your brain feel good. It's because you feel like you're doing the right thing, right? And maybe you are and maybe you aren't. The problem is that there's no way to know. So I don't have a right answer for how you deal with that kind of thing, but like it is, I think, really like the closest thing you can do, like I said, is you just have to say, like, you hear the thing or you see the thing or whatever it is, and then you set it aside for, like, I don't know, 24 hours, 48 hours.
I mean,
just a minute before you immediately like tippy-typey what your response is. I think that's really the only thing that you can do. Like that's the kind of responsibility. Like I don't think it's a big ask to have people do that.
Right.
Like everything else is complex. But I think if you just say, like, let me wait 5 minutes before I say, I heard this person is bad. So like there's, well, you ever hear of ContraPoints, the YouTuber?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
ContraPoints did a whole video about how it would go from like, this person did a bad thing to like, this person is the devil. Right. And we skip from one to the next, like that, like so quick. And that's the thing that we really have to kind of sit down and say, like, how do we talk ourselves out of doing that thing? But hey, can we talk about the shirt that I'm wearing for a second? Is that okay? Is that all right if we switch
absolutely.
the conversation real quick?
Yeah, please do.
It occurred to me yesterday, right before, today when I was going to come on, that the one thing I really wanted to do was talk about this place that I work.
Yeah, let's do it.
For about 5 years. It's called Forbidden Planet, FPNYC. It's located in Union Square in New York City. And it's, I don't even know what to call it. It's kind of a comic book store in that, like, it has a lot of comic books and graphic novels in it, but it's also a gaming store, and it's a video store, and it sells like a lot of really like crazy like import toys, and like it's a real like nerd emporium, and it's been around for almost as long as I've been alive. Like it just celebrated its 39th birthday, and I'm about to turn 40. So like almost my whole life, this place has been around. It's been an institution in New York City, and it's fostered so much talent that it's almost breathtaking. In just the couple of years that I worked there, Vita Ayala worked there, who is now a pretty well-known comic writer, and Dany Roth also worked there, and Tyler Boss, who's a comic book artist, worked there. Matthew Rosenberg, who's I think probably one of the most prolific comic book writers working in the last 5 years.
Oh yeah.
I worked with Matt Rosenberg at the same time there, and there's just like Matt Klein and John Petrie, who now work at Valiant and do a lot of their marketing work. Like there's so many people that are really important in the world of comic books and the production end of it that started out kind of slinging funny books at this one particular store. And because of what's happening in the world with COVID-19 quarantine and stuff, and like you said, it's necessary for things to be closed down, but to have no revenue coming in and to be renting a space in Union Square is an unbelievable blow to anybody. Yeah. And it's been a huge blow to Forbidden Planet. And, you know, this is a place that like I loved long before I worked there, that I continue to love. And so they finally put up a GoFundMe, and it was like, I'm glad that it's there, but it was really hard to see because the guy who's the book buyer and who was one of my first points of contact there, Jeff Ayers, is not a guy that asks for anything ever. Like he very infamously, he's like the guy that like lives in the same apartment for 20 years and never asks the super for anything because he doesn't want his rent to go up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like who never would like ask for anything, would give you the shirt off his back. Like would like you like never, I've never seen Jeff ask anybody for a favor in his life. So to see like that GoFundMe go up, I was like, wow, like it's really, the place is really in need. Yeah. So Forbidden Planet is probably the most important place I ever worked. I don't think I would have worked at Sci-Fi. I don't think I would have worked online. I don't think I would have written any comic books. I don't think I would have done anything. I wouldn't know so many of the people that I know now. And there are so many things in the comic book world that would not exist. So many great artists, so many great writers that would have not, I think, had the leg up that they had to create some of these really amazing books that they have, if not for that space. So it's really, really important to me that if anybody is watching this, that they go and look up FPNYC on GoFundMe and support them.
Totally. And there's a link we can put down below. Probably.
Yep, that'll be in the comments below. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's, I mean, yeah, I can't even like, I feel like there's really no words that I can use to describe that place. I just like, when I was doing Buffy Fest, that was, I remember I was working at, I was like a personal assistant to this woman down in the Union Square neighborhood. And I was doing Buffy Fest, and I would go to Forbidden Planet and like, we like printed up like cards, and we were like, can you put these in? Like if somebody buys a Buffy comic, like, can you like put this in the bag so that like people will check out our website?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And that was how I got to get to know those people. And like, it's just like, they really are good at sort of picking up the needs of the city in a counterculture kind of way when other places have fallen off to the wayside. Like, I feel like Kim's Video, I don't know if you know Kim's,
I don't know.
Was this huge video store for a really long time. It was like the place to go if you were looking for like weird old videos and stuff. Like that was it. You go to Kim's, and Kim's went out of business. And as every place does in that neck of the woods, everything turns into a fucking bank. And Matt D, who is our t-shirt guy and I don't work there anymore, but like is the t-shirt guy and the video guy at Forbidden Planet, was like, well, if there's no Kim's, we got to pick up the slack. So he went to Jeff and Rich and was like, you know, like I really want to grow out our video section and sort of give people who don't have Kim's anymore a place to go to find really weird stuff that like you wouldn't find streaming anywhere, that you wouldn't find even for sale on like Amazon or Best Buy or any of these places that you usually get, like wherever you get video stuff. And he did it. And, you know, to me, Forbidden Planet, that was like another thing now that the place had that you couldn't really get anywhere else, even in New York City, that you could get like these really wild movies. And that he would take on projects. And Jeff does the same thing where it's like, oh, you walk into the store, you've made a comic, you went to Staples, you printed out some copies, you folded it over, you stapled it shut, and you went to Jeff and you said, hey, I've got 10 copies of this book. Will you buy them? He'll be like, I'll take 5. Like, who doesn't know you from Adam? He doesn't know it. He doesn't even look at the book half the time. He'll just be like, sure. And then he'll put it up on the shelf. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
there's
awesome.
just so few places like that left in the world, let alone New York City.
Totally.
And Forbidden Planet, just like, without a place like that, I wonder what the world would be like. I know it would be less. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, please,
Don't apologize. No, that was super good information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that'll be
look into that
in the comments below or the description below. And I'm gonna screenshot our time here so I can remember it and break that off into its own video as well. So you mentioned also how working at Forbidden Planet ended up getting you your job at Sci-Fi.
Yeah, it's true. Definitely true. That it was that and working with Tara and Michelle. because I didn't really like working with them, and working in a comic book store sort of made me aware of how the business works. And it had me interviewing people that like are on production end or whatever end of the comic book business, so that when I emailed the then editor-in-chief of what was called Blaster,
Oh yeah.
at the time,
Yeah.
I said, I was like, like I know these people from Dark Horse, these people from IDW, like I've worked in this comic book store for X number of years, and so like this is the information that I have.
Yes.
And I had made videos for Forbidden Planet, and I'd written in there a little weekly pamphlet. I would like write reviews of books and stuff. And so when I sent all that information to that editor, like being like, please give me more, that I think was a big part of why A, I was given the opportunity, and B, that I actually had the information, like that I actually had something to write about.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, I visited your office once because I was on your podcast once there.
Oh, that's right.
And, well, one, I was terrible on your podcast because...
You're just on the same level as me, Pat. So yeah, terrible. Garbage.
I didn't know any of the stuff that you nerds were talking about, but no, it's I never felt more in awe of a building than walking through that office. And in fact,
oh yeah, that's 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
On the way up, Dany said to me that if there's any building that I could be in that would be the target of a terrorist attack, it's that one.
Oh, I don't know what a thing that I said. What an asshole. What a complete piece of shit. But also, probably at least in the top 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it was really a wild building to work in. I was only ever a freelancer, but I had gotten to such a point where I was usually there 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And it never stopped being weird, because we would, so like, for anybody that doesn't know, 30 Rockefeller Plaza is where basically like a lot of things in NBC are either produced or just completely filmed. Yeah. Pretty notably, like Saturday Night Live is done there. The Tonight Show is done there. The late night show with Seth Meyers is done there. Yeah. And just a whole bunch of other stuff. And when I would film during the couple of years when I was filming stuff every week, we filmed on the 6th floor. And if you don't know, the 6th floor is where the Tonight Show was filmed. Yeah. So we would just walk past like Jimmy Fallon and those people like every week. And that was never not weird. Like that was always like, wow, here we are. The people that did our hair and makeup were the same people that did the Saturday Night Live people.
That's crazy.
And, it was wild. Like, like I was and am an absolute fucking nobody. And meanwhile, like, there were all these huge stars that were coming through. Like it was very strange, because like you'd walk through and like you'd clock random people. Like I walk past and I'd be like, there's Kim Kardashian. That's weird. Like
in person, you saw her?
Yeah, Kim K. Like definitely, like just walked right past her.
Did you turn around?
I think what was really funny about that is somebody, like I told them, I was like, oh, I walked past Kim Kardashian, and they were like, oh, what you should have done. And I was like, oh no. And they were like, ask her about prison reform. And I was like,
hey,
you got me. That was good. That was very good. But yeah, like that stuff would happen. It was always very strange, because with the space where we filmed was just past where they kept the musicians. So you'd walk past like every like musician you could imagine would be there. Yeah. And it was really, really wild. That is like, other than the actual work that I was doing, the most wild thing about that time was that like, yeah, we were just on the same floor as Jimmy Fallon. And I think it was Megyn Kelly also. Less impressive to me personally. I mean, I'm sure she works very hard, but like we're kind of dealing with different ends of the entertainment spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that was that time.
So, I mean, I could ask about all your celebrity encounters, and I may, but just as your friend, one thing I do want to ask, and when you say, right, that you're a nobody, do you mean that, or is that self-deprecation?
I mean, like, in the sense that, your perception of yourself is, I think, always going to be warped, right? Certainly mine is. And for me, right, I am surrounded, I'm very lucky. I'm surrounded by what I would what I would call is true greatness, like truly brilliant people doing things that are way beyond my skill set. And so like when I say I'm nobody, like I'm a person, right? Like I'm a human being, but like the folks that I, for whatever reason, get to hang around with operate on like another level. Like when I sit down and talk with some of those folks, like my podcast partner on Song versus Song, Todd Nathanson, when I sit and talk with him about things, I'm like, he has total recall. If you said like, name me every movie that was up for Best Picture from like 1975 to present day, he could do it. He could just do it. He would just rattle it off. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And not only can he do that, but also like he can create all these correlations. It's not just raw data, but he's able to sort of look at that information and then exposit like these really like wild ideas and things. And he does that with music, and a lot of the other people I will do that with comic books or film or whatever. So like, I think for me working at Sci-Fi, I always felt that my job was to make sure that those voices were in the room.
Okay.
That was it. You know what I mean? Like I never really like, my voice is fine. But you know, whenever I encountered somebody, especially somebody who I thought had that level of intellect, but maybe not necessarily the follower count that some of these other people do that I know that have gotten some kind of notoriety, I'll say like immediately, like with you, I'll say like, hey, come on my podcast. Yeah. And to me, having somebody on Who Won the Week was partly about the fact that I thought that they would say something interesting on the podcast, but was mostly just like, okay, now I'm going to take you to the 18th floor where Sci-Fi is, or it was at the time, and I believe they're back on 18 now, but not to blow up Sci-Fi spot where they're located in the building, but I would take them, and then I would take them to like my boss, my boss's boss, yeah. The boss of this other department, and I would say like, you know, this is this person, and I would introduce them so that they could shake hands, yeah. And see each other face to face, because I knew that meant it would be harder for those bosses to ignore these people if they ever knocked on the door and said, I want to work.
That's nice. No, I think that in itself is a greatness. But if you don't mind, I have a story about you that, and well, I have two stories about you that I think that made me realize, one, how good of a friend you are, and two, just a level of your greatness that maybe you don't see, or maybe you do, you know? The first story is, do you remember when I would put on those short plays in New York?
Of course.
So, I would put on these like little 5-minute plays that were part of an overall show, and I would come to the city, and Dany would often come and see not only one show, but stay for the second repeat show. And it would be you, my mom, a friend of mine there as well. And you were just amazingly supportive. But the moment where I realized that you're a very special person through this, right, is, and I don't know if you remember this at all, but there was a musical week where every play was a musical, right? And I put on a musical, and I went way over time too. And there were like 3 or 4 songs in mine. And at the end of these, I was always kind of like riding high off of seeing my own work. And when the play ended, right, Dany, you said to me that you're gonna get going. and I was like, oh, you're not gonna stay for part 2? And you said, no, I didn't enjoy that. And
I don't remember that at all.
Yep. And I said,
wow, even a piece of shit.
Nope. I said, even mine, and you said, sorry, man. And that is what a writer needs, and that is what a fellow creative should do. And I struggle to do that, and I often no. That's a good story. Nope. That's a good story.
Dany still feels bad though.
That's a good story. I look back to that moment in my real life as that's what I should do when people show me something that isn't that good. I should be empathetic and come to the next one as you did, but you shouldn't celebrate a miss as a win, and you should be friendly about it as you were. But I think that what you did is what so few people are scared to do, and I think that that's beautiful. Okay.
I don't. Let me say this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't. As I was probably in my 20s at the time, and I'm turning 40, and assuming I don't die in like 2 weeks or whatever it is, I think I probably would be less likely to do that now, and maybe that's a weakness. But I'm surprised, maybe not surprised, that I did that at the time. Shout out to Blood Pong. There you go. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Go watch Blood Pong. Is it still online? Can people see Blood Pong?
They can't, but not because of me. They can't because of the music that we used that was claimed.
Oh, that's too bad. Let me say this. I really enjoyed Blood Pong.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
A big fan of Blood Pong. That's a short film that Pat made. One of many films that you made. That I don't know why that was the one that always stuck out to me. There was just something so like offbeat, funny in a way that I had never seen somebody make a thing before. Like it was such a distinct voice.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
I do know
Anyway,
that one.
all right. What's the second story? Is it as terrible as that one? A nightmare.
Dude, please don't think of that as a negative. That I swear, I hold in my heart as a positive, for real. That I think shows character and shows honesty in a way that I hope to emulate, and that's real. That's real.
Yeah. Okay. What's the other story? Please don't. I have a bad feeling I know what it is, but go ahead.
Oh my God. Well, it's at New York Comic Con.
No, I was gonna. You know what? The story that I'll tell you when it's not being recorded.
There we go.
I'll
Okay.
tell you what the story is that I think of.
Sweet. All right. So, this is sort of a dichotomy story where it was the last New York Comic Con that I've actually ever gone to. I went to the Black Mask booth and I got an intro to Matt at Black Mask to pitch, and he only had like about 45 seconds, and I stumbled through a horrible pitch. I really fucked it up. And then as I was starting to save it, a drunk guy banged into us and threw up right next to us and just totally destroyed the pitch meeting that I had already destroyed. And then I kind of on a low, I went down to Artist Alley and I ran into you there. And we were talking about stuff about this book that you wanted me to try. I think you actually bought me a copy of the book as well.
Oh yeah. I'll grab it when we're done. I know what book you're talking about.
Yeah, and then I don't know how we got to it. Maybe I told you that that the pitch meeting like went down, but you pitched me a story, and I'm not going to say what it is, but
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, during your pitch, you told a clear and concise story. And then at the end, you teared up about it, and you got openly emotional to me on the show floor about this story that you were passionate about. And I left that thinking, wow, one, to be able to be as in touch with your emotions and creativity, to be able to get there while talking about a story, and two, just to be clear enough to take that emotional journey and really tell the story through your pitch. That highlighted to me how pitches should be done verbally. And yeah, I always remember that as a nice thing about you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that story is one that I have been thinking about writing now. It's been sort of sitting on the back burner for a long time, but without without talking in detail what the story was about, it was really at its heart an awareness. So like I was talking about this before when I was saying like I was shocked that my dad and I are both still alive for Picard. That's not a joke. I have really bad asthma. My lungs are really messed up. And I have Crohn's disease, and I've had a lot of weird allergies and a lot of health problems throughout my life. So when I got married, one of the things that was really challenging about the idea of being married to somebody for me was this awareness that like I'm going to drop almost definitely way before my spouse does. And what I wanted to do was sit down and try and craft a story about how you cope with that. The awareness that like you're going to leave a person behind, that person is going to have to continue to live without you, because you know, when you get married to somebody, as I know both of you know, it's like, you know, even when marriages work, and marriages always work, you always will want one more day of that work. It's the work you want to do, and like you never don't want to wake up and say like, I'm ready to do it again. I'm always ready to have another day with my partner, and I don't think that I couldn't imagine that ever changing. I certainly couldn't think of that at the time, and like that has been so amplified now. With all this craziness going on. Like when I say like I'm turning 40 in like 2 weeks, I hope, like I don't fucking know what's gonna happen. And I feel like that's like an anxiety that everybody is sort of dealing with suddenly. Like, oh, like I don't know what's gonna happen. Like I truly do not know. And so the reason why that was so emotional as a pitch to you was just because like that has always been real to me. Right. Like I've always been aware that could happen at any time.
Yeah.
And I never want to, you know, even if I write a story that's me lying to myself and saying somehow, some way, when my wife is in her last moments, even if I was gone, that I would still find a way to be there then. Right. Like that's the story. Right. It's the thing that makes it so that I can believe somehow that I could still be there, which is really like, I don't know. I have no idea who that would connect with other than me, but
I know exactly who it would connect with. Your mom.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that anyone who lost a partner, and also I think that anyone who really loves who they're with, I connected to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So the book, I'm actually not gonna like reach out and grab it. It's called "Oh Human Stars" by Blue Delacorte.
Good memory.
That was the book that I wanted you to pick up. It's interesting because it's dealing with questions of sexuality and gender, and like it does it in this way that's like kind of interesting, futuristic. There's robots and stuff. It's fun. It's a really fun, and I thought very emotionally touching story. I'm trying to remember what year that was. New York Comic Con, I feel like you and I probably have a lot of pretty good stories.
Oh yeah.
Of stuff that happened there. My best New York Comic Con story by far was I went and actually this I'll get the art for. Sorry, this will take 2 seconds. Yeah. There you can fix that in the edit. All right, so. My wife's favorite artist. My wife's favorite artist is Bilson Cabbage. Okay. Bilson Cabbage is very well known, but perhaps the thing that he's best known for is like he's done like Electra, a couple of things, but I feel like he did the New Mutants run for a really long time, and his art's painterly gorgeous. What was creating comic book art that didn't look like what you thought the traditional idea of comic book art looked like at a time when really almost nobody was doing that. And people hated it. It's wild. If you go back and you look at like the reader mail at the end of the issues, like everyone would complain about like, who the fuck is this Bilson Cabbage guy? He's a monster. Like his art is terrible. But like it went on to be arguably some of the most influential art in the history of comic books. And my wife just loves his work and loved this Demon Bear story that he did. And loves his character, Magic, from Marvel. And she was really sick and she had gone to New York Comic Con for like a minute, wanted to catch him, and then like got like a flu or whatever and was at home, so like felt like crap. And this was like before I was doing well at Sci-Fi. I think I was writing a little bit here and there, still working at the comic book store. And so like I was on the shoestringingest of budgets, and I went to Bilson Cabbage and he had a drawing of Magic in her like full demon sort of look, and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. This is such beautiful pencil work. And I was like, I don't know if I could like pay like all this money up front. And Bill basically was like, if you just like pay me this amount right now and then just PayPal me the rest whenever you can, I will take on faith that you'll do it.
Wow.
And I told him the story about my wife and like how he had really inspired her. And so I actually ended up paying it pretty quickly because, I mean, that's the thing. When somebody is good in that way, you want to like, of course, like support them.
You do.
And so I got
Wow.
This I'm sorry that you're seeing yourselves.
That's okay.
Here we go. I'll go
Oh,
like
there you
that.
go.
There you go. That fixes it.
Wow.
But yeah, like, so this is some Bilson Cabbage pencil work, and I brought it home to my wife, and yeah, it was just like one of those things that we keep hung up on the wall to remind us of you know, like our ability to be creative even in the hardest of times.
Yeah.
Totally.
So anyway,
no, that's beautiful.
There you go.
That's I mean, it's a beautiful story and a beautiful piece of art. I love finding memories in physical pieces that you can just have and look at and just sort of like recapture that moment, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now you mentioned that you've had health issues, you know, and what I wanted to check in on you with and kind of share this is we have a shared medication that's been kind of hard to get.
Right, Singular you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, for those who are listening who have asthma and take this, I'd say get it while you can. But Dany, have you been able to get yours yet?
No, I haven't. Did you get some?
I did. I have a tip for you after this is over.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like, basically, as you mentioned, Singular is, I think, one of those medications that they're sort of suggesting could be a help to people as they're, you know, as we're all bumbling around in the dark to figure out what it is that's going to keep people safe and get them to the end of being infected with coronavirus.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the meantime, as has been the case with a lot of these attempts, it means that other people who would ordinarily take this medication are either having a great deal of difficulty getting access to it,
yes,
or can't get it at all, you know? So for me, like, I don't know. This is, so like, here's a piece of information for people who may not know. If you have allergies, when these allergy seasons come along, they're not one-to-one. It's not the same way every year, right? There's different stuff that's in the air each time. So that's why some years when the allergy stuff comes through, you'll barely feel it at all. And some years it's like everything closes up and you can't breathe. So this year for a lot of people was a really bad year, and it was a really bad year for me too. So I couldn't get the Singular, and taking Claritin wasn't really doing it, and taking Symbicort wasn't really doing it, and taking a rescue inhaler wasn't really, like, I would take all of these things and it wasn't really enough. So I had to take Prednisone, which is just an oral steroid, which like is really like an emergency thing. Like when you take that stuff, like that's like taking like cocaine, you know what I mean? Like that shit is like, yeah, I guess it'll make my body work pretty great, but like there's a lot of risks that happen. And like, I think something that people that don't realize about COVID, boy, I'm really on a fucking tear today. But the thing about COVID is that people thought that like, here, X, Y, and Z, these are the symptoms, but like people keep discovering these new things. Like the big one now is like heart attack. Yeah. Like people will suddenly like their heart will give out and die. And I had a buddy die 31 years ago, 31 days ago, a month ago to the day, of a heart thing. And at the time, we didn't think that it was COVID because there was nothing about it being a heart thing.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we look back on it and that's like, we'll never know because they're not gonna test a dead body, which is fucked to think about, my friend, in these terms. And yet here we are. But yeah, like taking something like Prednisone, like can put stress on the heart, can do all these things. So like it's pretty wild. My health has been up and down. But I've had friends who, like me, have autoimmune problems or immune deficient in some way, who have gotten it and been fine. And I've known people who were completely healthy who got it and were gone in 5 days. And that's the thing that's like, not to be like such a downer. I think I just like, you know, when you look on the internet, you look at everything. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people on the internet talk about this thing like it's a hoax, like it's not real. And
it's infuriating.
And they're like, I don't know anybody that died. And I'm like, I know many people.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people who, like, my former editor-in-chief at Sci-Fi Wire got it, and it was like a cold for him, and he was completely fine. Yeah. You know, and like I said, I've had multiple friends that got it and were just gone. And that's fucking real. That's the real truth. And it's crazy to think about like how to deal with the medication question. Yeah. Even when you don't have it, because like you didn't have the Singular. What was the impact for you during the time when you didn't have it? Did you, because you told me that you just, once you started taking it, you were always taking it. So you had no real concept of what you were going to be like without it.
Yeah.
That's why I was so nervous, because like every day you take it. So, but it wasn't too bad, but there was a difference. Like even when we were on FaceTime with your mom, there was a point where I was like, I could hear you more wheezy. And I'm like, are you having trouble breathing? You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know how it felt, but it sounded differently for sure.
And I had to play it off saying that she was pissing me off because I didn't want mom to know.
He didn't even tell his mom that he couldn't get the medication until he could get the medication.
Yeah, because like,
I was like toying back and forth with texting your mom every morning when I woke up.
Yeah, because I was like, what is she going to do? She's just going to worry. She's already, we can't see her because of this, you know?
Because she would freak out.
Right. I mean, like, I think that's understandable though, right? Just because, I mean, you talked about this before, right? Like she's lost her husband, you know, you lost your dad. I think that for her, I think the stress is going to be that much more.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but that puts the strain on, I don't know why am I talking about like I'm your two therapist, but like, I would think that would put so much on you, Amy, like you were saying that like, you felt that like, should I be talking to his mom about this stuff? Like,
yeah, but
you know, just as much of a stress as it is on Pat to not be able to breathe, you're the one that's dealing with it also as his partner.
Oh yeah, you cried about it.
Oh yeah. I cried to him. I was like, I'm so nervous. I was worried.
Yeah, but like the difference in my breathing, and this isn't me speaking for anyone else who's missing this, just me. But I went from like wheezing wise, like my norm is like Tony Soprano season 1. I went to like season 6, Tony Soprano.
Yeah, my voice has changed a lot too. During this time, it's weird to like hear it and go like, oh, who is that? Yeah. You know, that's like my dumb joke during this time. I'm like, man, I remember like in my 30s, I'd be like trying to convince people that I was still in my 20s. And like when I was in my late 30s, I was like, oh, like, can you believe that I'm in my late 30s? And people would be like, can't believe it. And now like any day that someone's like, you look like you're 40, I'm like, it's a miracle. Like, thank goodness.
Oh, come on.
Even today.
Thank goodness anybody perceives me as being my own actual fucking age, just because like, man, like health stuff will really catch you.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, but you don't
and
look
not
older
leaving
than
the
40.
house really messes you up.
Yeah, but you don't look older than 40 at all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate. I genuinely appreciate that. Although I will say this, I can't imagine. Like I remember caring about my appearance a lot, partly because I was on, I was being on camera a lot. But now I'm like, am I still alive? Like every day is like extra innings. I wake up and I'm like,
yeah,
still breathing. Like this is amazing. Like that's like that's that. I try to remind myself that is like some astonishing great news.
Yeah.
And just look at it from that. So that like as I have been putting on weight and my hair is starting to fall out and like I'm starting to look a little older and grittier. I'm like, this is okay. Aging is a thing that happens when you're not dead. So good.
Yeah, everybody does it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of beautiful wives and quarantine, how was the marriage stuff going during quarantine? Do you guys argue a lot? Are you comfortable being locked up together?
So we got very lucky because we both had worked very hard and also had really good gigs for a while that we've had some money saved up.
Yeah.
And also that we'd gotten into a place. So like, I think the perception, and this is true 90 some odd % of the time, that if you live in New York, you're like in this really tiny apartment, right? Like we are on the top floor of a private building and our space is big, like my wife has her space where she's a costume person. So like if she's building clothes or whatever, she's got her space where she does that. And all the way at the other end of our apartment is my office where I can, sit and like podcast, or usually, I podcast from there. But this time I locked into my hard connection because I didn't want to have the things break down in the middle of a very important Zoom call. But, we've got our separate offices, and so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But, I think that everybody who is married and not leaving the house, which is not normal, is dealing with challenges, So like for us, the challenge is that I rely upon Raven to be the one to go out into the world, you know, because I'm too chicken shit. I can't, like, I'm really afraid. Like I said, I have a friend who has a lot of the same issues that I have, and she went once to the post office and then got sick. Like, that was it. Left once. Like, this is a person who was like giving people things and like lowering it out her window on a rope. This is how careful this person was. They left the house once and got it. So for us, the big challenge is that this expectation has been put upon her, and she's much better cooking than I am. So now, like, you know, we used to order in a lot, and so now she's cooking a lot more. So that's where the pressure comes from, right? Because she's willing to do that work for me. But it is hard. Like, that's a really hard thing to put on somebody, to be like, you go get the groceries, you take care of the laundry, like, you go turn the engine of the car over because I'm too afraid to leave the house. And when you come back in, like, please make sure that you thoroughly disinfect yourself or whatever, you know, like, it's a lot to put on a partner, and I'm aware of it. And I think that like, we're doing very well, but it doesn't mean, like, I don't want to put something out in the world and be like, we got no problems. Like, this is easy. Like, that's bullshit. Right. We've got a lot of privilege in this house and a lot of things that we have that other people don't, but we still have things that we have to account for.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. We,
I feel the same way, except Pat's Raven.
I'll say this from the perspective of someone who kind of matches what you were talking about there. I'm happy to do it. And I think that it's also smarter to have one person that does it, you know? I mean, especially because of what you were saying about your immune system. I know that if I were continuously unable to get what I need to go back to Tony Soprano season 1 instead of season 6, that Amy, you would have had to take that duty, and that you would do it, you know?
I would.
Right?
No, yeah, I just feel bad because you're the one with asthma, but you use the times that you go out to play Pokemon in the car, so it's like a double whammy for me.
Yeah, I mean,
like, he'll go
playing
out.
Pokemon. Yeah, I've been watching all about the what was the one with the hair?
Oh, Ponyta, dude. Yeah, Ponyta.
Yeah, Ponyta. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
He wrote a fucking novel about that one.
I felt good about it. You know, the little wins.
You wrote a novel about Ponyta?
Yeah. Well, just a little Facebook post. Yeah.
That's a great American novel.
I mean, right there. I think so. You know.
Imagine what is going to happen. What kind of stories? I saw my friend Lindsay was joking about how, like, all these people who have to deal with novelists are going to be getting pitches about coronavirus forever now, and I was like, oof.
I know.
I was like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to tell that in an artful way that's not just literally coronavirus. But yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of hard to not think about it, like what kind of art you're going to create and how it will be impacted by the fact that you will quarantine for a long period of time.
Yeah, longer than some know. Yeah, because I mean.
Yeah, his mom's in denial.
Yeah, I mean, she takes it seriously, but every phone call that...
No, she's not in denial about the sickness.
Right,
She's in denial about how long everything's going to be shut down.
Exactly, yeah. It's like...
Oh, yeah. Like I was saying, I haven't been out in 31 days. And I think I thought about it yesterday, and I was like, it's like, well, that's 1 month down. A minimum of 11 more of those to go.
That's about how I think too, yeah.
That's fucking buck wild, you know? And it's different. I mean, you know, Pat, I know that you work, I mean, I would assume at this point that, you know, because you're a writer, you're doing a lot of working from home.
Yeah, yeah.
So it can be a little, like, it's still stressful because you're used to doing certain things that you're doing less or not doing at all. But, you know, I was already a bit of a hermit prior to this, right? So much of what I was doing was just working from home and only going to an office maybe once a week or whatever. And so it's different for me. I think what is funny, what I realized was it seemed normal until everybody else was doing it. And I was like, oh, this is weird and wrong. Yeah. This is awful. Nobody leaving the house is strange. Like, why did I think that this was regular behavior? Me just sitting at my desk, writing a couple of words here and there and then crying because I think it's bad. Like, man, this I thought was normal, and now, like, is it? Yeah. Everybody else is doing it, and that seems like it should make it normal, but it makes it seem
And everyone's
terrible.
complaining about it.
That's what it is, because you see people describing your normal routine as if it's hell.
As like jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, wow. I don't know. It's pretty wild to see it in those terms. It's very strange watching people talk about
I'm
not leaving their house
scared.
online when it's a thing that I got so used to doing.
Yeah, I'm more scared of the sickness itself than being stuck inside, because like you said, we're pretty much homebodies. Like it's changed because I stopped going to work and back, but mostly every day. But besides going to work and back, I didn't go much elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm just mad scared, because now it's to the point where my friends' parents and uncles and friends' friends and stuff are actually passing away and stuff, and my whole family's in San Diego, and there people I know are like, you know, compromised and stuff, and this is like not even halfway over.
Yeah.
So it's like, when is someone I know gonna die?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a lot. It's a hard thing to deal with. It's important to remember that we're all dealing with it together, except for the people that have decided that it's not real. But even they too, in spite of themselves, are still dealing with it. Yeah, I want to say something just because, like, while we're talking about this.
Yeah.
You know, I try to be pretty chill. I'm not going to name names, but there was a YouTube channel I used to follow because I'm into TV tech. So I watch and if anybody's got opinion about where TV technology is going, this is like my huge nerdy thing. So I watch any old video about it. And there was one guy that I used to watch who was sort of infamous because he just like picked fights with all the other TV tech enthusiasts. And I was like, this is so weird that he's doing this. What's up with this guy? But I would still occasionally watch his videos. And I saw today, he posted a video about how it's all hoax, and that like if things are so bad, like it was called like here's people from the front lines, and it's audio of people talking about how hard it is to be a medical professional, a doctor, a nurse, a med tech in hospitals during this time. And he's spliced that audio with like TikToks and Instagram videos and stuff of nurses and doctors like dancing in the hospitals and stuff during this time. And I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What is this proof of? That like people, when they're not sobbing in the fucking stairway, that occasionally they have to, pardon my motorcycle, it's mine. Somebody stole it, shit. But like, that people need to cope somehow, you know? That's like, to me, what was it? It's like saying slavery never existed because the slaves would like sing songs when they were in the fields. It's like it's just an insane thing to think.
Yeah, it's
you know what I mean? It's like
like
people can be suffering. By the way, I'm not equating being a medical professional and being a slave. I don't want to be that guy. But like, but my point is that like when people are suffering, they will find the human mind finds weird ways of coping. And it might be that like you're gonna like twerk on a TikTok for 5 seconds before you go back to sobbing in public. Like it's just like that doesn't make it not real. You know, like I think that people sometimes need to forget, and it's a mountainous effort to find ways to not think about this, and you might do weird things. You know, it's the same reason why like every time you look on Twitter, it's like it's another hashtag about who's over. It's like so and so is over party, and like I make jokes about it. Like I think it's kind of obscene, but like I know why people are doing it. It's just a coping mechanism, right? Like. Yeah. They're not serious. They don't really think like they're not like, I don't think people are really spending a ton of time canceling people online right now. I think there's a lot of people that like half-heartedly do it because what else are you going to do? You're not going anywhere. Like, I get it. Yeah. Like people are going to find weird coping mechanisms during that time. They're not all healthy, but like, you've got to understand that like, that doesn't make it not real. It just means that it's so surreal that it makes your brain do very weird things to try and cope.
Now, do you think that cancel culture, once we're out of the pandemic, do you think that it gets worse, or do you think that we unite together in a beautiful utopia?
That second thing will never happen. I think that everything is an ebb and flow, right? A rise and fall of the tide. talking about cancel culture, what a complicated thing. I don't really even know where to begin with something like that. It's such a big topic, right? Because it's like come together suggests that like cancel culture shouldn't exist, or that like people should never be like publicly reamed out for bad behavior. Like, I don't know if that is a thing that I could get behind as an absolute. I think that we live in a time where people, like we talked about before, will jump to that so quick.
Yes.
And I think that just Twitter hasn't existed that long, man. Like it's been, I mean, I realize it's been around for a decade, but like, you know, I always look at it this way. We went crazy at the invention of the fucking radio. You know, we're just silly fucking animals. And it takes a really long time for us to deal with rapid progress. And so like it was like, oh, like here's radio, here's television. And like from radio to television was a big leap. So like from TV to internet is madness.
Yeah. It's
something that like, it's been for most people that will watch this probably, like even for people who I think have like no memories of a pre-internet age. Of which I have, you know, like I was pretty old before we had internet in my house. But as a whole, as a culture, it's something that we're still learning how to interact with people in this way that's so immediately accessible, that requires, I think, a little extra thought, because like I said, you know, like it used to be back in my day, you just naturally had the time.
Yeah.
Like you'd hear a thing, and then like you weren't going to go run out into the streets with like your bell being like, I heard this person's bad. You know what I mean? Like now you can, and it could get retweeted a billion fucking times. Like it's just the consequence of that is something that I think we're still learning from. Right. Sometimes I think ultimately it's a net good. And sometimes it's going to do things that hurts people and perhaps unjustly. It's just a thing that we haven't figured it out. We're just like we're not out of the woods on COVID-19. I don't think we're going to be out of the woods on how to truly responsibly use this tool for a really long time.
Yeah. And
you can't like, you can be frustrated and you can challenge people to say like, how is it best that we use it? But I think to constantly be mad at people because they do something and then, you know, maybe ultimately get it wrong. Like we're all getting it wrong.
Yeah.
We're all human beings. We're all going to like use this very complex tool in ways that we, in the moment, don't realize has hurt people, or in the moment we don't realize just how powerful that it is. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think people like come together. I wish. That sounds fucking great. That's always like my ideas. I always think like I get in trouble on the internet all the time because I will hear people say something and I'll go, you've got a good point. But then like all the rest of it is madness. So like let me on the opposite political spectrum, like try and sit down and like talk with you and say, so like here from my perspective, doing my end of things and believing my thing, like you're saying this and this part, I honestly, like, I agree with you. But then all this other undercurrent of things that you're saying is just not real. It's just wacky conspiracy stuff. And the minute that you engage with that, all of a sudden, like, people go, well, you're bad, or like, you know, like flip out because you tried to engage at all. And then everybody thinks you're bad, right? Like the people that agree with you are like, you're bad. Why'd you talk to them? And they'll go like, you're bad because you admitted the one thing was true. Therefore, we were right about everything. And you admitted one thing and then everything else that you said is a lie, because it's just a way of saying like, we were right all along. And how we get out from underneath that, I don't fucking know, because that's not an internet problem. That's a humanity problem.
Yeah, it's a people guy. Yeah, it's a people problem.
Anyway,
no, I like it.
No, it's true.
I like it.
Very true.
Now, hold on, I think we're getting to time. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're about an hour and a half. Can you? I mean, how would I phrase this? Do you have any other things that you want to share, get to, or promote?
I'm in the midst of working on a project that eventually will come out, and it's going to be called "The Songs That Shaped Us." That is going to be a written series. I'm going to be bringing in other people to write it, and it's basically like, you know how during the COVID times, like there are all these memes that are coming through, and a lot of them are like just like post 10 albums that meant something to you.
Yeah.
Like there's been, or like 5 favorite films or whatever it is, or like 5 perfect movies or whatever that stuff is. I think that stuff is great. But I think it really invites an opportunity to sit down and really do the homework on those things. Yeah. So like for me, I'm writing about a song by Nirvana called Tourette's off of an album called In Utero, because that was a song that not a lot of people think about, that when I first heard that album, I was at a particular place in my life. And so that song had a lot of meaning. So I wanted to sit down and say, like, all right, what was happening with this band at the time? What was happening with me at the time? Yeah. What was this song about for them? What was this song about for me? And how, like, sort of like, where do those things tie up together in the past? And what do those songs mean today? Yeah. So that's the thing that I'm working on now that eventually will come out. And hopefully we'll get a lot of different voices coming in and writing about a lot of different kinds of songs. And giving people, like you said, like what I did with the pitch with you, like it's an opportunity for people to be a little bit emotionally raw. Yeah. If they want to be, and talk about why songs mean so much to them, because I think music is a great unifier. Yeah. Like, you know, if we're talking about like, how do you make it so that people come together, as impossible as it often is, I think music is truly one of the great unifiers. When you love a song, like that can be really universal. So there's that. And yeah, just to reiterate, we're going to be having the Delta Quadrant. That is a Star Trek Voyager rewatch podcast. That will be myself, Vida Ayala, and Dany Roth. It's going to be a really gay podcast, Pat. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of gay shit in that podcast. We're going to be getting a lot of justice for B'Elanna Torres. I would highly recommend that Pat Shan specifically listen to this podcast. It's a great opportunity for you to listen to us talk about it. You can think about your dad. We can have you be a guest on the show.
I would love that. I would love that. And
we can talk about anything you want. You can talk about Voyager and the relationship that you had to your dad and what he loved about the show. Wow. So those are the 2 things that I would say I hope that people are going to check out that will be coming out soon.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. That was great.
The only thing that I wish had happened is that my shirt hadn't been so wrinkly during this episode.
I wish you didn't make me cry.
No, I'm sorry. It's actually a thing that I do very well. I'm very good at making people cry. Yep. Please go and support Forbidden Planet on GoFundMe.
Yes. Totally. Description down below, Forbidden Planet. Dany, thank you.
Thank you, man.
Space between.